This is section 1.2, part C, on comparing expressions and equations. So in example 5, I just want to label each of the following as either an expression or an equation. The first one right here has an equal sign, so that one has to be an equation. And in part B, there's no equal sign, so this one is an expression. It's important to know what type of either equation or expression that you are working with, because the rules for simplifying an equation stop before the rules for solving an equation start. So we want to make sure we know which one we're working on. Okay, now I'm going to simplify the expression, this guy, and I'm going to solve the equation. Okay, so since it's an equation, the steps begin the same way. I use the distributive property, so it's going to be 4 times x is 4x, minus 4 times 5 is 20, plus 3 equals 2x minus 9. I'm continuing with simplify steps right here because the individual sides are not simplified. So an individual side is still an expression. So I'm going to simplify that side. It's going to be 4x minus 17, since negative 20 plus 3 is negative 17, equals 2x minus 9. That's where the expressions are both simplified, and now the equation work begins when I start moving things to the opposite side. So I'm going to begin by subtracting the smaller amount of x. I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. That's going to give me 2x, since 4 minus 2 is 2, minus 17 equals negative 9. Don't lose your negative on that 9. Then you're going to add your 17 to both sides. That's going to give you 2x equals 8. And then if you divide both sides by 2, a little bit small here, but we're going to get x equals 4, since 8 divided by 2 is 4. Okay, so that's how I would solve that equation. In part B, this is an expression. It also starts with the distribute, so I'm going to begin by distributing. So we're going to have 6 times 3 is 18x, minus 6 times 2 is 12, plus 4. This is an expression. 12 and 4 are on the same side. There's actually only one side since it's an expression. So I'm going to combine those. So I'm going to have 18x minus 8, since negative 12 plus 4 is negative 8. Now because this one is an expression, not an equation, it doesn't have two sides to work with, so I have nowhere to move anything. That's just done. The goal in simplifying an expression is just to combine like terms. Your result is going to be an expression. And the result of solving a linear equation is a solution. And there's a few different types of solutions. It could be, remember those 3 cases from the previous section, so it could be x equals a number, or it could be one of those special cases of no solution, or all real numbers. Those are the 3 types. Remember, if we had a conditional, a inconsistent, or an identity case. Okay, let's look at example 7. Once again, same directions. We're going to simplify the expression or solve the equation. In the first one, we have an expression with several distributes to do, so we're going to start there. We're going to take 2 times x is 2x, minus 2 times 5 is 10, and then we're going to take the negative and distribute it. So we'll have a negative 6x and a negative and a negative. We're going to make that positive 1. And finally, we're going to have our 3 times 2 is 6, so minus 6x and minus 9. Okay, so we're going to combine like terms. This is an expression. There are no equal signs. They're all on the same side. So we're going to combine all of the x's together. That's 2 minus 6 again. So 2 minus 6 is negative 4, minus another 6 is negative 10x. Then we're going to combine all of the numeric values, all the constants. So that's negative 10 plus 1 is negative 9, minus 9 is going to be negative 18. And that's an expression, so once I've got all my like terms combined, I am done. Number 2 starts off very similar. The problem looks very close, except that instead of a subtraction here, I've got an equals here. This one's an equation. So I'm going to once again do that distribute. I'm also going to get 2x minus 10 minus 6x plus 1, and then here I have the equals instead of a minus, so I'm just distributing a positive 3 here. So equals 6x plus 9. Okay, so I simplify by combining like terms on the left-hand side. That's going to give me 2 minus 6 is negative 4x. and combine the constants also. Negative 10 plus 1 is going to be negative 9. Then I have my equals 6x plus 9. Okay. Now that I have an equal sign here, we're going to move things to the opposite side. So I'm going to start by adding the 4x. I want to move the smaller value, so I'm going to add the 4x to both sides to get the x's on the same side. So I've got negative 9 equals 10x plus 9. Now I want to work away from the 10x, so we're going to subtract this 9. It gives me negative 9 minus 9 is negative 18 equals 10x, and I want to divide both sides by 10. I'm going to have to go over here because I'm out of space. When I divide by 10, negative 18 divided by 10, I'm going to keep it as a fraction, but that fraction can be reduced. If I divide them both by 2, then it's going to give me negative 9 over 5 equals x. Okay. Tip. When simplifying an expression, the only number that we can multiply the expression by is 1. And we're mentioning this because it's okay to simplify an expression by getting a common denominator if necessary. So when multiplying by 1, we mean like 1, or we mean something like 2 over 2, working on getting a common denominator. However, if I'm solving an equation, we can multiply both sides by any number, any non-zero number. Like, for example, we multiply both sides right up here by 1/10 when I divided by that 10. Okay. Let's check out the next part of this section. All right, so once again, we're simplifying expressions or solving equations, and we've got two sets here of similar problems where one is an expression and one is an equation, or vice versa. So in part C, this is an expression, so I want to combine my like terms. So when I combine the x terms, I'm going to want to add those up. However, at the moment, they don't have the same denominator. So my first step is going to be to get a common denominator. So the common denominator with the x terms is going to be 8. The 3/8 already has an 8, so I'm going to multiply this one on top and bottom by 2 to get a common denominator. So I'm going to change this to 3/8 x. I'm going to go ahead and reorder it, minus 14/8 x, then we'll have our plus 7/6 at the end. Okay, now I can combine those two by subtracting. 3/8 minus 14/8 gives me negative 11/8 x, plus the 7/6, the constant had no term to combine with. That's all I can do since that one was an expression. I can't add up those two terms because they are not like. Okay, in part D, this one is an equation, so it's okay to multiply everything, both sides of the equation, by the same thing, by any number. So I'm going to choose to clear the fractions like we did at the beginning of this section. So I'm going to clear the fractions by multiplying by the LCD, and the least common denominator for all three of my denominators is going to be 24. So we're going to take 24, and we're going to multiply everything by 24 using that clear the fractions technique again. This technique does not apply in an expression because you don't have two sides to work with, but it is going to help us solve the equation. Okay, so I'm going to make sure I multiply 24 by 3/8. I know that 8 goes into 24 3 times, so it's going to leave me with 3 times 3, which is 9x, plus I know that 6 goes into 24 4 times, so it's going to leave me 7 times 4, which is 28, equals, I know that 4 goes into 24 6 times, so it's going to leave me 7 times 6 is 42x. Now I need to get my x's on the same side, so we'll subtract the 9x. It's going to leave the 28 on the left-hand side, and it's going to give us 42 minus 9 is 33x on the right-hand side. Then we're going to divide both sides by 33 to solve for x. 28 and 33 don't have any common factors. I can't divide by 3. I can't divide by anything, so that's just going to have to stay as 28 over 33 is my reduced fraction. All right, let's look at the last two. In part E, this one is an equation, so we're going to clear the fractions again. And we need to find the least common denominator for all of those fractions, so 2, 4, 8, and 4, are going to have a least common denominator of 8. So that means I'm going to take 8 and multiply everything by it. So my 5/2 x minus 3/4 equals 7/8 x plus 1/4 is all getting multiplied by 8. And again, we're going to distribute that 8 to everything. And when I multiply, I get to clear my denominators. So for example, 2 goes into 8 4 times. That's going to give me 5 times 4 is 20x. Minus 4 goes into 8 2 times. That's 3 times 2 is 6. 8 goes into 8 once. So 7 times 1 is 7x. And last, 4 goes into 8 twice. That's 1 times 2 is 2. Now to clear the fractions, we're ready to solve this equation. Look for the smaller value of x, the 7 right here. So we're going to subtract 7x from both sides. 20x minus 7x gives me 13x. Minus our 6 equals 2. 7 minus 7 is 0 on the side, so just a 2 is left. Then, to get the 13x by itself, we'll add 6 to both sides. So 13x equals 8, and then we're going to divide both sides by 13. Again, you can't reduce that one, you're just going to end up with 8/13 as your solution. Once again, comparing this to part F. Part F starts off in a very similar fashion, but it's got a subtraction, not an equal signs. This is all just one expression. If it's one expression, I can't clear the fractions. This is for equations only. So I instead have to get common denominators between the like terms. So we're going to get common denominators between the x terms and between the constant terms. So the x terms, it looks like 2 and 8 can both be divisible into 8. So we're going to multiply the first one by 4, and the second one I'm going to leave the same. So my x terms are going to be 20 over 8x minus 7 over 8x. So again, I reorder that while I'm going. And then the constant terms already have the same denominators, so they don't need to change. So I'm just going to have minus 3/4 and plus 1/4. Okay, so now I add these up. 28 minus 7/8 gives me 13/8 x. And negative 3/4 plus 1/4 gives me negative 2/4. But negative 2/4, of course, can be reduced. You can divide those both by 2 to reduce this to 1/2. So my final answer is going to be 13/8 x minus 1/2. That is the simplified expression.